Well, just when you thought that realignment, the ACC cycle, everything going on with Florida State and Clemson was really dying down, and we weren't going to hear any more about it for a while because the season, ladies and gentlemen, is just about upon us. We are just a couple of days away, in fact, from the ACC season starting with Georgia Tech and Florida State in Ireland. But out of nowhere comes a knight in shining armor to save us from no realignment talk. And that knight, of course, is Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports, who threw a curveball and a bombshell into a season preview article for the ACC. And this has to just drive the ACC nuts. Even in the CBS Sports experts predict the ACC season article, you can't get out of it without a big realignment prediction being made by somebody who is pretty plugged in Dennis Dodd. He made the prediction that ESPN will not renew the contract of the ACC when that deadline comes around in February, which would mean the contract is done in 2027. And he says that would give Florida State the out that it needs. So there is a lot to digest with that prediction. It is something that I'm not seeing a lot of people really talk a whole lot about, at least not in those kinds of terms. It has been much more along the lines of, legally, litigation-wise, somehow Florida State will figure this out. It has not as much been, hey, I think ESPN is actually going to go snip on the contract here. So there is that. Now, while we have that, I also have a lot of college football playoff to talk with you here today, because not only do we have a prediction that has just one Big 12 team in the playoff, but does at least have another on the bubble. I want to chat a little bit about something I had not really thought of until shout out to Stephen Godfrey from the college football world, who pointed out today that, guys, the Big 12 may not be hosting many, if any at all, college football playoff games, which will surprise people because, well, John, if the Big 12 champion, they're going to get a bye and host a game, right? No. Only seeds 5 through 8 actually host a college football playoff game. So there is that to break down. Now, within all of that, can the Big 12 actually get a second team in the playoff to be an at-large, maybe be a 5 through 8 seed host someday? There is a debate there. There is really a debate to be had. But I was actually like, man, this is one of those things. There have been so many changes in college football. You have to kind of think through all these scenarios and everything that is happening. And sometimes things like that will slip through the cracks. So that is not something I had gone down the road of yet. Plus, everybody has to get new and innovative with ideas to make money these days, especially if you are the ACC or the Big 12, if you are not one of the two power conferences in the SEC or Big 10 that hold all the power, hold all the cards right now. You got to get creative. And I love a creative idea that we saw this week that will involve the helmets of the players that are actually out there on the field. This idea seems to be at least panned in some small way. Like, some people are kind of panning this. I think it's a pretty damn good idea. One that is low risk, maybe medium reward, low risk, medium reward. I just really like the innovation. And so, look, I'm a Big 12 guy, but if the ACC were doing this, I would be talking about this. But when I'm talking about an idea that is innovative and it involves trying to make money, you can see where that's going. It's probably going to be a Brett Yormark thing, right? Well, this is not exactly Yormark, but it is his league. It's probably going to be something associated with Brett Yormark, and it does come out of the Big 12. So we have that on the docket tonight as well. But you guys know, if you've been here before, you can be a part of the show. You can lead me into different territory if you would like. And you can do so by, if you are in the YouTube chat, clicking the $ below the chat box. It will attach a donation to your chat and make it a super chat, which ensures that you get on tonight. You can still take part in the rest of the chat, and I appreciate all the guys who do and would highly encourage you to do so. But if you want to make sure that your question or comment gets read, that is the way to do it. And for everybody here, particularly those of you watching on Twitter, if you are a little bit more new to the program here, now that I've been streaming on Twitter for maybe like a week and a half, 2 weeks, make sure, if you are a Big 12 fan and you want to be the smartest Big 12 fan in your group chat. Stay up to date on everything and get all your college football news without any SEC or Big Ten bias, not through the SEC or Big Ten lens. You can sign up for my Big 12 newsletter called Open for Business at ofbnews.com. That is ofbnews.com to sign up for Open for Business. You can also, if you are watching on YouTube, just click the link in the description of the video. So it's right there for you if you would like that, but also just a pretty easy one to remember, ofbnews.com. So that's where we're at. Like the video. All of that is great. And if you want to contribute on Venmo, if you're not watching live, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo is a way that you can contribute as well. And if you do that and leave a question or comment there, I will get to your question or comment to kick off the next live show. So lots of ways to get in touch, stay in touch, be on top of everything. And if you are a supporter of the channel, a supporter of what I do, OFB News is definitely the best place to do that. ofbnews.com to get signed up for the Open for Business newsletter. We are dangerously close to 2,000 subscribers to the Open for Business newsletter in under 2 months. So I like this pace. I like this pace that we are going at. When have 2,000 people ever been wrong about anything? Anything at all. It has never happened in the history of the world. All right, let's get to this Dennis Dodd. Instead of just merely reading this to you, I will even allow you to see it for yourself. And it's thanks to it's a great Twitter account here that is going to share this for us. There we go. Huevos Banchero. So here's what Dennis Dodd said. Now, again, important to note the context of this. This is in an ACC preview story. This is not about realignment. This is all about previewing what is going to happen in the ACC season. Who's winning the league? All of CBS Sports' experts are making their predictions. Who's winning the league? Who's overrated? Who's underrated? It's all categories like that. I lay that out to say that there was no need to insert realignment unless it was something you were really wanting to make a point about, unless it was something that you were really, really confident in or just felt was very necessary to put out there. Because you get all the way through to almost the end of the article, and there is a category for bold predictions, your bold predictions for the ACC season. And some of the others were, I think Tom Fornelli said the ACC will get 3 teams in the playoff, which, boy, too rich for my blood. Now, he said nobody else would even come close, but there'd be 3 teams in the playoff. I can't see that, but that's a bold prediction. It is bold. We'll give him that. Somebody else predicted a 4-way tie for first. That's pretty bold. Another said Clemson and Florida State don't make the title game. I believe that was Shahan Jayaraja. That's a bold prediction that I can really get behind, because that is pretty damn interesting. Pretty damn interesting. But Dennis Dodd says, as all these people are talking about, 4-way tie for first, no Florida State Clemson in the title game, Dennis Dodd drops in this. In February, ESPN will exercise its option not to extend the ACC contract beyond 2027. Florida State, having played the long game, will have its out and be able to put itself on the market. FSU will do so at a much reduced rate to get out of the grant of rights, since it will only have 3 years to run. Don't ask me where FSU goes, but if it is as a free agent beginning in 2028, there will be Power 4 interest. Basically, the next round of major realignment begins less than a month after the 2025 championship game. Buckle up. All right, so Dennis Dodd is not going to say that just based on nothing, right? Now, if you want to dispute with me, is this actually accurate? How good is his sourcing? Does anybody really know in the realignment world? That's fine. You can do all of that, but I guarantee you this is not just being pulled out of thin air by Dodd. I'll put it that way. And again, where it's at in this article, like where it is, it's not like just a realignment specific thing. He went out of his way to insert this into something that was just about the upcoming ACC football season. So again, to me, tells me he feels like there is a reason to get this out there. There are also two parts of this to address. One being, okay, the contract option will not be picked up. And I guess I should give a brief summation here for those who have not been following this like day by day. But the deal here is that ESPN, it has been revealed, has the option actually to not extend the ACC contract beyond 2027. Everybody had been saying, wow, this TV deal goes until 2035 into the mid 2030s. That's crazy. But actually, there is an option there for ESPN. It has been revealed. Now, most have said, well, that will probably happen. I mean, it's probably going to move that way. But we're left to kind of wonder here. It's been dangling there, and the deadline for ESPN to decide is February of 2025. So we're not very far away from that, just 1 month after the national championship game, as was already pointed out there. So there is that piece of it. The grant of rights only being then 3 years. If you're talking about, hey, that's when it would run out, 27, 28, ESPN's deal would run out. The conference is going to, I guess, well, first of all, the TV deal being done means the grant of rights are done. We could discuss, I suppose, at that point, like, all right, are they going to be able to get a new TV deal? What does that look like? But at that point, if the grant of rights are only that and it's going to cost less to get out, now you're talking about the Katie bar the door sort of scenario here in the ACC where everybody will be able to get out. That's the deal. Like Brett McMurphy had laid out in his piece, like, hey, there's not much of an appetite for Florida State and Clemson from the Big Ten and the SEC if the ACC is still remaining intact. If it's not just like a, hey, the whole thing's blowing up and now you got a bunch of teams dangling loose and we might as well take them scenario. This is much more the bunch of teams are dangling loose, might as well take them scenario. If it's going to be cheap enough for Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina to get out, you're in trouble. ACC is in major trouble at that point. And slicing the grant of rights down by what, like 8 years, that's going to do it. That's going to drive that price way down and make it much more attainable for teams to get out. And so that is what Dennis Dodd predicts. Now, he also says, don't ask me where they go, but if they're a free agent beginning in 2028, there will be Power 4 interest. This is where Florida State fans rejoice. Clemson fans rejoice. There will be Power 4 interest. I would agree with him. If the ACC is blowing up, well, look, first of all, obviously there will be Power 4 interest because we know the Big 12 would definitely be interested. But I think you'd have SEC and Big 10 interest at that point because they'll be out there. It's not like you were the ones that did this and like killed the league. I would profess to believe that in this scenario, the Big 10 and the SEC would probably come back around into the picture for Florida State. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a full share. I would not necessarily say that, but I would say that they would have the opportunity, I would guess, in this scenario that is outlined here. So if we're thinking from a Big 12 perspective here, what does that mean for those ACC teams that are not in that top tier? If you're not North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, maybe like Virginia, Miami, what's happening to you? Well, that's where the Big 12 comes into play. Are we talking Louisville? Are we talking Pitt? Whoever else it might be, Virginia Tech, NC State, like that kind of tier. Perhaps that's then when the Big 12 is circling the waters and ready to come in and pounce. It does, I will say, in fairness to Jim Phillips, I felt it was fair that I read this. What Dennis Dodd is saying here is a direct contradiction to what Jim Phillips has said about the future of this TV deal. In fact, just about a month ago, almost a month ago to the day, this is what Jim Phillips said at ACC Media Days. He said, quote, "Our partnership with ESPN is not going away. It's not going away. We have talked to them about additional resources and how do we monetize it. We're 50-50 partners on that. They're as motivated as we are to generate more revenue for the overall television deal. I'm very optimistic about where we are going with them. They understand the importance. I'll just leave it at that. So Jim Phillips says they're as motivated, ESPN is as motivated as the ACC is to get this done. I mean, I find that even if it's, ESPN wants to do this thing, I still find it a little hard to believe that they would be as motivated as what we have here with the ACC. That's going to be extremely motivated to make sure that this happens. At least ACC leadership, not all of the schools in the league, but ACC leadership certainly would be. I will also say there could be a number of ways that Jim Phillips is being misled or trying to mislead us, right? I mean, you don't have to look back very far. And this is the logical comparison that has come up throughout this entire thing, this entire process. Hey, what about last year in the Pac-12 and how similar that actually looks to what we have this year with the ACC? George Kliavkoff was a guy who said a lot of things, that came across pretty positively. And there was not a ton of pushback from Pac-12 country. He was saying it either through reporters or a couple times at press conferences. We're not sure if we're done shopping. We're going to catch the SEC and Big Ten financially. That was said at one point by George Kliavkoff. That was uttered in public on the record. He said they would catch the SEC and Big Ten financially, which was a crazy statement, a wild statement that was nowhere close to being true. So it's kind of like politicians at this point. You got to treat it a little bit like politicians. Can't trust everything that's being said here because much like George Kliavkoff at that point in time last year throughout this whole process, like his job is to preach stability and everything is fine and keep the league together. And we saw what happened when he finally lost somebody. Colorado slipped free. That was the first domino that really fell, and it made everything come tumbling down. We could argue his tactics there, but it's clear like he was trying to keep everybody intact by professing that things were okay. Jim Phillips very much could be trying to push the same kind of vibes in his league right now. He also could very well be getting led astray by ESPN. I mean, ESPN can say they're committed all they want until they are not, until you get to the actual time where the I's have to be dotted, T's have to be crossed, and ESPN could say, well, look, Jim, we're sorry. We wanted to maintain a good working relationship. This clearly isn't working. This is kind of a mess with Florida State and Clemson. We don't have crazy funny money to throw around anymore. We're going to have to back off on this. We're going to have to stop. It could definitely happen too, or be what is in the process of happening. So a number of different scenarios here, but if you do take Jim Phillips at face value, he says this is not in any trouble and it's fine and the ESPN contract will be no issue. Now, if that is the case, why hasn't it happened yet? I do think that has to plant at least a little bit of doubt in your mind. Hey, it still hasn't happened yet. So if ESPN were really truly that motivated to do it, wouldn't it have already happened? I can understand asking that question with it as well. But that's our update. This is one that raises an eyebrow for me because even if you don't think Dennis Dodd is the most plugged in guy in the sport, I mean, he is pretty plugged in. And I know there will be people, it's just any national reporter, I will say a name like that. I say, hey, I like and respect Josh Pate. I think he's a big name in the space. And people will crap on that. If you say it about Brett McMurphy, people will crap on that. It just comes with the territory. So I understand I say that, and I'm sure I will get comments of people like, Dennis Dodd, whatever. What are you doing, John? That's fine. He works at CBS. He's a guy that's been around for a while. He is definitely talking to a lot of people, and he felt it important to insert this into an ACC preview article about the upcoming season. That's, to me, significant about the chances of this actually happening. And there are a number of ways that Jim Phillips can be getting led astray here. You can have your own opinion on Jim Phillips. I have not been a huge fan of his leadership and just sense of meeting the moment right now in college athletics with what is going on. So I'm inclined to be very skeptical about that. But we get a little bit of realignment. And I've got to be honest, even in sitting here talking that out with you guys, I find the realignment saga fascinating. Everything that's going on is wildly fascinating for sure. For sure. But even I am like, man, at this point, like it's August 21st, dude. Like week 0 is this weekend. We're going to get actual college football this weekend. We are a week away, like 10 days away from the whole big shebang going. I'm a little worn out by this and a little bit more like, hey man, can we talk about some actual football? Can we talk some actual football? Because I would love to do that. So we are going to do some of that. We're going to talk college football playoff, which you guys all know I am an advocate of. College football playoff is not how we should view everything through this sport. In fact, that's a big reason why I created Open for Business, the Big 12 newsletter that you can subscribe to at ofbnews.com or by clicking the link in the description of the YouTube video. And if you are on Twitter, would encourage you to hop over to the YouTube audience to do that. And you can also contribute to the channel by clicking the $ below the chat box. And we'll guarantee that your question or comment makes it on tonight. So if you have something for me, that is the way to make sure it gets on. But ofbnews.com, totally free to sign up for the Big 12 newsletter. Huge reason that I did that. Like, we need to celebrate the regular season, celebrate the sport. Everything that's made it great has never been about a postseason or a playoff, even when it was the Bulls. This is a sport that just has a wonderful regular season with so much to take out of all of it. So it's not all about that, but Big 12 and ACC teams, I think, need to listen up here. A crazy difference between the Big 10 and the SEC in the playoff and how this could go down. And another one of those little things, that I've discovered through this, like what I told you about the other day, that is like a non-direct monetary way that the SEC and Big 10 are able to strengthen their grip on the sport, maintain their competitive advantage outside of just, hey, they have more 5-star players that are going to the NFL, or they have more cash. There are indirect ways, like more indirect ways that they can continue to strengthen their grip on the sport. And so we're going to talk about that in just a moment after I check in with Payson Cougar Fan. What's up, Payson Cougar Fan? Payson Cougar Fan says, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Virginia will explode Utah's Big 10 dreams. Oh, Payson Cougar Fan has got Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Virginia all hopping into the Big 10. North Carolina seems like one that makes a lot of sense. I have always said that, and I know there is a lot of doubt out there by people in the know about the Big 10 and the likelihood of them taking Florida State and how much they really want it. I still would like to see what happens when push comes to shove. I would also just say I trust a lot of that I have heard from people. But at the same time, just logically, if I were looking at it, my conclusion was, well, it seems to make more sense for Fox and the Big 10 to want to be in Florida than it does for the SEC to double up there. So it did always seem to make some sense. But we shall see. I will just say for right now, it did not seem to be trending in the direction of Florida State and Clemson going to the Big 10. But North Carolina, they're a coveted prize. They are way higher up the ladder than Florida State and Clemson right now in the realignment hierarchy, because it is not just a total meritocracy based on how you've done on the football field. And we all know that. Big 12 teams would be in a different position if that were actually the case. But it is unfortunately not a meritocracy. Now, do I think Utah is going to the Big 10? No, I do not. And Utah, we'll see how much they are really still Big 10 dreaming as we move forward throughout the Big 12 here. It does seem like there is some of that, but I truly don't believe that like all Utah fans are still stuck in a mode of like really super actively longing for the Big 10 right now. But Payson Cougar Fan, you've got to deal with them a lot more than I do. So I understand that. Even though I'm dealing with them some, you are definitely dealing with them a lot, quite frequently, I'm sure. So Payson Cougar Fan, appreciate you. Always love to see you here on the channel. If you guys would like to be a part of this as well, part of this discussion, click the $ below the chat box to do that. And I appreciate everybody who supports there. Bracket Cat, you know what? I gotta pop this up here real quick. Bracket Cat says, I love how I'm like the only Big 12 guy in here. You guys flock into this video are proving just why John talks realignment so much. I told you, like, especially at this time of year, I'm like, dude, like, let's get actual football driving the bus a little bit. Let's talk some actual football here. But it is the numbers. The numbers always, without fail, indicate that you guys care about the realignment stuff more than just the pure football. So I have to mix in a lot of it. That is very true. That's very true. Bracket Cat, appreciate you being here, though. Let's talk college football playoff, though. The Big 12 is going to have a team in the college football playoff this year. Could they have two? And would one of those teams be hosting a college football playoff game? A revelation to me. It is not very likely at all. And it's a dumb revelation. It's a revelation basically out of laziness for me that I did not realize this until now. But it is very unlikely that the Big 12 is going to host a college football playoff game this year, or maybe ever. But we're going to break down why and the odds of the Big 12 getting two teams in, which warrants a pretty strong discussion and bouncing it around on Twitter, not just with myself, but among some guys who cover the game at a national level, was a very interesting exercise earlier today. It starts with Andy Staples, who is from On3, and he is doing, and get ready for this, you're going to see this throughout the year, he was doing college football bracketology, right? We get bracketology now that we have a 12-team playoff. So a little tongue-in-cheek, Andy Staples was giving us some bracketology, and here is what he has. You will notice there is a Big 12 team there. There is also a Big 12 team in the first four out category. So Andy Staples has K-State winning the Big 12 and being the 4 seed there, not hosting. That is the whole point here. Why did I just do that? Not hosting, but they would be playing the winner of Alabama and Boise State. 5-12 matchup there. That would be at a bowl site. It would be a neutral site. It would not be on campus. Utah is in the first four out of the college football bracketology, the first of the year from Andy Staples. Now, he also went down and showed, are there other Big 12 at-large candidates? The only one he listed outside of those two was Oklahoma State, which I would agree. I don't think anybody, if you're going to be a Big 12 team that makes it as an at-large selection, you're going to have a reputation and get a head start at the beginning of the year by being in some of these polls and getting a lot of the discussion generated about you. Those are the 3 schools that have really done it. Kansas, I think, has done some. Arizona has done some, but they don't have the backing of at least being like a really competitive football program for the last, however many years. Kansas still is trying to shed, and Arizona trying to shed some of the last decade of stench off of them in football. So I think that is why he would put it that way. Now, he then listed, like everybody else we talk about, as possibility to win the Big 12 as potential entries into the playoff because of winning the league, right? But I think it's a fair enough summation right there. I picked Oklahoma State to win the league. He's got K-State, Oklahoma State, K-State, and Utah are my top 3. And here's what he says about K-State. He says, Will Howard is Ohio State's starting quarterback because the Wildcats decided to roll with sophomore Avery Johnson. College football hasn't seen a QB this fast since Kyler Murray. The question is whether Johnson's arm can complement his legs. If it is, K-State's offense and a deep defense can win a league that is incredibly balanced and could be a bloodbath come November. He also, in his Utah section here about them being on the bubble but out, he says quarterback Cam Rising led the Utes to back-to-back Pac-12 titles during his last healthy seasons. Will he have to win a Big 12 title to get Utah back into the playoff, or could the Big 12 get an at-large team into the bracket? Well, it's a good question. Could they actually do it? I think it is far less likely than likely to happen, but I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's impossible for the Big 12 to get 2. Certainly in the scenario of what we had with TCU a couple of years ago, 12-0, unbeaten season, great story, make the championship game, lose a heartbreaker, you go down in overtime in the Big 12 championship game, still make the playoff. And that was with a 4-team playoff where everybody's an at-large, right? That did just happen. And to me, that would provide some evidence to the contrary, that it would be impossible for the Big 12 to get somebody in the college football playoff outside of just the conference champion. I would even submit, hey, Cincinnati, I know they weren't a Big 12 team at the time and they did win their league, but it was the American. They won the American and they made the playoff the year before that. So we have seen at least some evidence from the committee that they will go outside of just the blue bloods, just the SEC, just the Big Ten. There's at least something there. I'm not saying I trust them to do that or do the right thing all the time or even close to it, but it's happened some of the time at least. And there are a lot more spots here, even if, yes, clearly it was designed to, in general terms, get more Big Ten and SEC teams into the playoff. I do that to set up this tweet from Stephen Godfrey from Split Zone Duo. And I don't think he meant this with any kind of malice. In fact, I think he's actually kind of sticking up for the Big 12 here. But somebody, the guy named Ryan, responded to him and said, "It's so wild that the top 4 schools basically get punished for winning their conference by losing out on the possibility of an additional home game just so we can make a handful of soulless execs happy. The bowl system just needs to be removed from the playoff combo." So his point there is, hey, if you win your league and you're in the top 4, you don't get to host a playoff game. Those first round games that are hosted by seeds 5 through 8 and played by teams 5 through 12, those are the only ones that take place on campus. Everything else, we're going back to neutral sites, which is kind of lame. And yes, not only is that just a competitive advantage hit to not have the next round be played at the higher seeds home, it's also like a financial hit. I mean, you think about the extra business that could be added to the local economies and the schools there if they're able to host a home game. Like, there's a lot that you don't get there. But Stephen Godfrey made this point. He says, now this is something we can debate. He said K-State's only path to the 12-team playoff is winning the Big 12, which likely means a first-round bye, which means instead of hosting an SEC team in the December weather at home, they'll go to an NFL dome and be outdrawn 2-1. Now, you'll see there are 40 replies to this. There was a lot of pushback. There were fans mad about saying K-State's only path is winning the Big 12. There were fans mad about be outdrawn 2-1. Again, I don't think Stephen Godfrey it's not meant with any malice here toward the Big 12 and the schools in the conference, K-State being the example that's held up here. I truly don't think that at all. What he is saying is, like, if we're going to do playing on home fields, one, that's the way better way to do it. That's what we love about the sport. Home field advantage is such a huge part of it. The pomp and circumstance at every single stadium is a huge part of the game. That would be awesome. Why are we not doing this? I think there's that part of it. And then the other part is, like, hey, this is actually another one of those ways that the SEC and the Big Ten strengthen that grip, man. They strengthen that grip on everything, because there's no way in hell that an SEC or Big Ten that had agreed to let the top 4 conference champions get the first round bye, there's no way in hell they were then letting them host on their campus teams from the SEC or Big Ten in all likelihood that would be headed to play those games. Because take, for instance, the bracket that we were just looking at. If we are here, you're talking about the difference between Alabama, K-State in, like, I don't know, maybe the Georgia Dome, maybe Jerry World, or Alabama in December traveling to Manhattan, Kansas. Probably cold, definitely rowdy, and changes the dynamic of that matchup considerably. So, of course, they were not going to agree to that. You know, if we wanted to have, in my opinion, the best version of the playoff, you would definitely be doing it with all of these teams playing games on campus. Maybe if you want to still have the championship game in a neutral site, I can understand that. That's fine. But everything else, if we truly wanted to do this playoff the right way, yeah, man, bring home field advantage into it. But nobody's going to do that when they know that there would be a Big 12 and ACC team there in the top 4 that would get to host SEC and Big 10 teams. That was always going to be a no-fly zone. God forbid, we have, the 10-2 or 9-3 SEC team go on the road again in the playoff and have to take on somebody in the Big 12. That was not going to happen. Much like I said the other day, like, the SEC can get away with just the 8-game conference schedule. They can get away with playing a scrub in week 10. They can do these things because they don't need to squeeze every dollar out of that TV contract. They can also do something like this because they can. They have the power. They already conceded enough. Hey, we gave you guys a bye in a top 4 seed. We don't have to bow down to you for anything else. Like, we're being generous as is. We're not going to do anything else with this. So it's the unfortunate reality. It is the unfortunate reality. Now, if we're going to talk about the parts of the tweet, let me hop back in here. The parts of the tweet from Stephen Godfrey that were disputed a little bit by fans. K-State's only path to the 12-team playoff is winning the Big 12. That is one of them. They'll go to an NFL dome and be outdrawn 2-1. Let's start in reverse order. They'll go to an NFL dome and be outdrawn 2-1. Yeah, it's not necessarily true. I mean, Big 12 fans travel. K-State fans definitely travel. I can remember there were pretty positive reports about how TCU traveled to that Fiesta Bowl, right, to play Michigan. I watched the Big 12 championship game with my own eyes from Jerry World between K-State and TCU that year. Both fan bases were there in full force. K-State at one point in time in the 90s and early 2000s was known as like maybe the best traveling fan base in college football. At one point, it broken the record for most fans to cross state lines to attend a bowl game. I believe that was the 97 Fiesta Bowl when that happened. They also brought like 35,000 to the 96 Cotton Bowl. I know all the history, K-State fans. Like, K-State fans will definitely travel. But a lot of these stadiums, like if you're playing in Atlanta, if you're playing in New Orleans, and you're playing an SEC team, you are going to be outdrawn. Now, it's probably not going to be 2-1, but you'll be outdrawn. And the real point here is you're not getting a home game. And instead, it's going to be a neutral, at very best, atmosphere there. That's the whole real point here. So I didn't get too hung up on that. But the more interesting and like salient point that's being made here is what happens with this part. K-State's only path to the 12-team playoff is winning the Big 12. Is that actually true? And I would tell you, no, that's not true. Now, I think in some ways, like this tweet, it's kind of a broad strokes, and maybe even Stephen would admit, yeah, there's probably exceptions to the rule, but that will be the rule. And I don't think we would be too far off on that. I've kind of said to you guys, like, I am not very confident at all that the Big 12 will get two teams actually in this thing. If there's going to be two teams that make it in, I think it has to be K-State, Oklahoma State, or Utah, because they have, and Shahan Jayaraja from CBS chimed in on this discussion later and said that K-State had the best combination of a manageable schedule, but with marquee games that people will pay attention to. And they have upside and star power with Avery Johnson, who just got predicted by Ralph Russo of the AP to win the Heisman this week. And he is not the first. So there's hype there. People know the names. You have enough credibility built up, not only in the last decade or so, but then this season. People know Chris Kleiman and believe in him as being a good coach. Like, you have some of that built up to formulate a narrative, because a lot of this is it's narrative building. It's what kind of narrative do you have to sell to the college football playoff when they are going to be making these types of decisions. Utah obviously has the credibility built up. Shahan said K-State is the best of the three, would have the best shot. Utah has the credibility built up with the back-to-back Pac-12 titles and Kyle Whittingham, and they've got that in spades. I would say more so than anybody in the league right now. However, they just don't. The schedule's not meaty enough for me to feel great about if they're trying to make the playoff. You know, maybe if they're a one-loss team, but if they're sitting there at like 11-2, Big 12 championship game loss, that could be tough. They have Oklahoma State. I believe they get Arizona, but they're not playing K-State. Their non-conference best matchup there is Baylor, which it's technically a non-con game, previously scheduled series. That's not going to do a lot, turn a lot of heads. So they just don't. The schedule's not working in their favor in terms of getting a bunch of high-profile games that people will really be watching. Oklahoma State maybe has a little bit more of that. They also they have star power in Ollie Gordon and Mike Gundy. Like, people know them, people trust them. That program's built up a lot of credibility. I would say Oklahoma State would have a pretty good argument there that they may be just as established as K-State and entrenched as a team that would have a shot here. I told you, if we're talking about two Big 12 teams in the playoff, a lot of it is going to come because, or the most likely scenario there, the one where I feel best about their chances to get in, third time's a charm, is the TCU route, undefeated, losing the championship game, make it be close. But beyond that, if you have a one-loss team that goes, well, an unbeaten team, I guess if we're talking one loss, we're talking about you'd have to lose that Big 12 championship game. If we're talking about a team that has one loss, goes into the Big 12 championship game, loses a close game in the Big 12 title game, do they still have a chance to get in? Shahan was laying out the scenario of like 11-2. He said K-State would have the best odds of anybody 11-2. It depends. It really does depend. What games have you played? How much have people paid attention? And what is the perception, right or wrong? What is the perception of what people think your team is? And I think the Casey's building for K-State is that they will play a Friday night game against Arizona. That is going to be on Big Fox early in the season. A lot of people will watch, and assuming nobody stubs their toe before that game, it will be a matchup of ranked teams, and people will be very excited to watch that. It's got star power. Avery Johnson, his reputation precedes him. He's still got to go out and prove it this year on the field, but he's gotten that reputation. People know him. They know there's a lot of upside there, and especially in a gambling world where people are looking for long shot Heisman odds, like people know about him, and they know that there is star power that is there. They also, in terms of big games left on the schedule, they've got Colorado pretty early in the year. I think that matters because while I still think Colorado is a bowl team, there may be a drop-off like last year where the hype dies a little bit after a hotter start. So getting them earlier in the year when people are paying more attention makes a difference. Oklahoma State, for instance, has them on Black Friday, right? That's at the very end of the year. Who knows what that's going to look like for Coach Prime and company by then. What was the other game I was thinking for K-State? Well, they have Oklahoma State early in the season coming into Manhattan. That'll be a big game. K-State, Kansas, not only should it be a big game, I think it will have a lot of novelty value for folks this year because of how big it will be and the rarity of that happening with both schools being potentially ranked when that game comes around. So you can see the case here for how K-State would have a lot of opportunities to play games that people are paying attention to and watching, which could help you out there. Now, at the end of the day, if it's 9-3 Florida going against the hellish schedule that they have and 11-2 K-State, am I confident that K-State is getting in the playoff? No, I am not at all. I am not at all. I do think you are very much tempting fate with that. But is there a possibility? Yeah, I think there is an outside possibility of that happening. And once again, I would point to the evidence of TCU and Cincinnati to say that it is not always 100% of the time just a total brand show when it comes to that. But a part of this, and one of the things that I think is really fascinating about it is that, as I said, if you're not a 5-8 seed, which in this scenario, if you're an 11-2 Big 12 team, you're probably not a 5-8 seed. You're probably talking about just trying to hang on and get in there like 9, 10, 11. You're not going to be hosting a playoff game. And then if you win the league, you're not going to be hosting a playoff game. So all of a sudden you'd be looking at this like, is the Big 12 ever going to actually host a college football playoff game? Because your champion will just go on and move on to the neutral site round. And then your at-large, if you get one, is not likely to be in that 5-8 range. So as cool as it is to think about hosting college football playoff games, and like not only have the fans been dreaming of this and thinking about this, but, even at a press conference, I know that Travis Goff at Kansas, the athletic director there, he had said, hey, we're reserving the week of whatever it is. We want to make sure that Arrowhead Stadium, like we can host a playoff game there. That was a conversation there. It's not very likely because you'd have to be a 5, 6, 7, or 8 seed. And I think if you are a Big 12 school, if you are making it in, you're probably going to be one of those very last. You're going to be 9, 10, 11. If you're sneaking in as an at-large. So we may go without Big 12 schools getting an opportunity to do what is basically the coolest thing about the extended playoff that to me anyway, that some of these games are going to be played on campus, which is just such a cool thing and such a great piece of the college football atmosphere. And it's unfortunate that that may not really happen. It's one of those changes nobody really thinks all that much about at the time, but now has been brought to my attention, and that is kind of a bummer. I would love to see, think a college football playoff game at Rice Eccles, a college football playoff game at Boone Pickens. Come on, man. Milan Puskar, like you get Mountaineer Field all lit up, lathered up for a night playoff game in December. It'd be amazing. I would love to see that. And it would be a great showcase for the conference because we know one of the things the conference has going for it is really strong, passionate fan bases. And that's why it's been so annoying. Some of the Pac-12 slander that's come over the last couple of years. Like, dude, there are great fan bases here, and it is what makes college football awesome. And that's where the Big 12 can really shine. So that sucks. It's also the fact that you don't get it in the round for the team that gets a bye, a bummer, because if we were doing this in an ideal world, that would be the way that it's done. But the Big 10 and the SEC would never actually allow that to happen. So thus, that's the situation we've got. It's what we're living with, but something to keep in mind as we get ready to set sail on this regular season. Okay, as I mentioned, if you want to be a part of the show, click the $ below the chat box to submit a super chat that will ensure that you make it on here. If you are a Big 12 fan and you want to support me, support the work I'm doing, best thing you can do is go to ofbnews.com to subscribe for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. It is totally free. I should probably mention that more. Totally free. ofbnews.com. You can get twice a week all the headlines that you need curated to Big 12 fans. So you're not going to deal with Big 10 or SEC bias or stories just through a Big 10 or SEC lens and how it affects those conferences. You'll learn how it affects the Big 12. So you can be the smartest Big 12 fan in your group chat. ofbnews.com to do that. James, what's up, James? Digging that Oklahoma State logo that you got there, James. James says an undefeated Big 12 team against a one-loss Big 12 team in the Big 12 championship with the one-loss team winning wouldn't both get in. Probably so. I seem to be slightly more confident in that than some on Twitter were. Now, then you have Shahan Jayaraja, who is even outlining like legit possibility that somebody at 11-2 from the Big 12 could get in. That I'm a little bit more skeptical of. But yes, if it's unbeaten team loses to a one-loss team in the Big 12 championship game, that's definitely a scenario where you should have a shot. You should have a real shot. But some of it will depend on what you were thought of before the season. It's dumb, and it's part of the reason people would want to do away with like preseason polls. But if you're up there and you're getting talked about more, people are tweeting about you more. You've got star players that are interesting, like, Colorado, right? So let's play this all out. And I know people get mad for me even using Colorado in the hypothetical. But if it's Colorado, who is the unbeaten Big 12 team that goes to the championship game and they lose to one-loss Kansas, Colorado is probably getting into that playoff, right? Because everybody knows Coach Prime. They know Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders. They're a big deal nationally. Ratings draw, which, I know they'll say that doesn't matter, but perhaps subconsciously or consciously it does. They're probably getting in. If it is, now I got to think about this here. Somebody who's not being talked about a ton right now. Yeah. I don't want to make anybody mad, but I'm thinking like a Texas Tech. If it's Texas Tech, a program that has not been at that level in a long time since the days of Mike Leach, and they're not thought of in the preseason as being somebody that's like a top 25 team, a team that's really in the mix. If they were to be that team and then they lose in the championship game, are people then saying, well, kind of fluky season for Texas Tech? TCU was even getting some of this in 2022, kind of fluky season. We don't really know if this is legit or for real. We don't have as much trust in this. We didn't think that they were that good to start the season. I'm not saying that's right, but I do think they would stand less of a chance than making it in than like a Coach Prime would in that scenario. So James, I think it depends. I think yes, but it depends is really the answer there. Zach, what's up, Zach? Appreciate you, Zach. Thank you for being here. It's been a minute, man. Great to hear from you. Zach says, since he was supposed to host Nebraska in 2025 and they forced the issue, and now the game will be on a neutral field in Indy. I have zero faith now that the Big 10 or SEC will ever do right by Big 12 teams on this. Good. No, they'll never do right by the Big 12 or ACC on anything. Although, again, I will point out they kind of tried, like Sankey was trying with the playoff for a while there, and guess who held it up? Guess who held it up and was a big part of that? And now Sankey doesn't feel quite as generous. Oh, that's right. That would be good old Jim Phillips. the commissioner of the ACC, who cost Big 12 and ACC teams millions of dollars by doing that. I digress. Great leadership, Jim. Thank you very much for that. That's lame, Zach. I didn't know that. That sucks. That sucks. Getting Nebraska to come to Nippert, especially if they really do have something figured out here with Raiola and Matt Rule, that could have been a really, really fun game, a great one. And hopefully it still will be on a neutral atmosphere, but just like it's Indianapolis, I almost just dropped an F-bomb there. Like Indianapolis, what are we doing? We're throwing Cincinnati and Nebraska in Indianapolis when we could have that on a campus at a great stadium that would provide a great atmosphere. Why? There's so much that's dumb about it drives me crazy. I was complaining about baseball today and how, like the Royals are having a good season. I don't ever watch them because I can't get them on YouTube TV or any kind of cable package. You'd have to buy Bally Sports, and I don't want to do that. It's such a dumb thing from baseball. You need to attract younger viewers. You need to get people engaged because you're losing market share really with your sport. And yet, they do things like that. It's like college football. You've got this great thing. It's all about the atmosphere. That's what separates it from professional football. It's the atmosphere and how much the fans care and all that stuff. And then you're going to take Nebraska and Cincinnati and put it in Indy instead of Nippert. It's very, very dumb. But I'm with you on that, Zach. I'm with you on all accounts there, my friend. Mark, what's up, Mark? Okay, Mark, I figured somebody might ask me about this. Okay, Mark says, and Mark, I appreciate you, man. It's great to see you here. Mark says, I know, another realignment question. Rumor swirling, UConn to the Big 12, move imminent, discussed on Locked On Big 12. Sorry, John. Hey, you don't have to apologize, Mark. I don't mean to dissuade anybody from bringing up the realignment stuff, in part because, like I said, it drives numbers. It drives viewership, Mark. So you're actually doing me a favor a little bit by bringing this up. Here's what I will say about that. It was definitely not like my report or news. Locked On Big 12, I believe, had the Locked On UConn guy on there, who was the one who had said he believes this is happening, that UConn would be going to the Big 12. It was not something I chose to talk about just because I don't know much about that guy. A brief check and followers are not everything, but it did not appear to be a guy that's broken a bunch of news before or that had a huge following where people are being like, oh, hey, man, this is really legit. Realignment stuff is hard, man. If you're going to have real concrete realignment info, it's hard even for the big boys and the big reporters. Just think about the way this stuff is broken. It's been through, John Wilner got the USC UCLA scoop when it actually came time to make it happen. And Brent Zwerneman from the Houston Chronicle, same thing with the Texas Oklahoma thing. And it only occurred under special circumstances because Texas A&M was upset. It just, those things are really hard to nail like that unless you are somebody that is really established, really in the know. So it gave me some skepticism about it. What I will say, and I never try to be hey, I'm inside info guy. I try to stay well informed and use it to formulate how I talk about things here and sound smarter. But I don't try to be hey, I'm breaking this story based on this info. And especially in the realignment space, that's just it's so dangerous to do and so easy to get burned. I have had somebody tell me that UConn is definitely not out of the discussion. It's not dead. UConn's not dead, but in no way was it expressed to me that it was anything that is imminent or happening really soon. And, then trying to run it up the flagpole past a couple other people, didn't get anything of the sort. So, you can take that with a grain of salt because I just told you to. But I don't have anything that would tell me that it is imminent. I do think it still remains a possibility at some point. And look, that's part of the realignment game too, right? If we're just being honest, that's part of the realignment game. If that really is the truth, hey, it's possible, but not happening right now. Well, if you come out and say, hey, it is definitely happening, well, then you could technically turn around and be like, well, see, I was right. When it happens a year later. Well, see, I was right. It was. So, there's a lot of that could be going on. I don't know. I don't know anything about where that's coming from the Locked On UConn guy. That is not an attack on him at all. That to me is just an explanation of where I'm at with it and why I chose not to make it a lead topic or anything like that today. So I hope that suffices. Now, if you want to know like my opinion on UConn to the Big 12, if it were to ever happen, I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. And I understand the football challenges very, very well. Understand that there are football challenges there. But the basketball is really tempting, and you're building up quite a behemoth in basketball. And nobody's doing it any better right now than UConn, if you didn't notice. And Dan Hurley just turned down the Lakers job. So I'd imagine he is sticking around for a while, and UConn's going to be a force. You add that into your basketball league, and you're trying to add extra money for everybody and decouple the rights. I mean, I think there's a path there where it could make some sense. Football's a bit of a struggle. I have watched UConn football play was it at the time a BCS Bowl? I think it would have been a BCS Bowl at the time, not New Year's Six. I have watched that happen in my life, so I know that they can do a little something. I'm open to it. Not saying I love it, not saying I would for sure pull the trigger if the decision were up to me, but I'm open to it. That's where I am on UConn. I'm UConn curious. UConn curious. It's not much there. I wish there was. Connecticut. I don't think there's anything there, guys. I'm UConn curious. I'll just leave it at that. Jake, what's up, Jake? Appreciate you, Jake. How soon could Big 12 split basketball off from the TV rights deal? No reason to bring Gonzaga and UConn until then. But football, ACC, how big will the conference grow? 20 to 24. Well, these are all great questions. They're all big questions. They're all questions that are kind of impossible to answer accurately right now, but I can just give you off the cuff here. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to decouple it before the TV deal would come up in the early 2030s. I'm not actually sure about that, how that would work, if that's something you could pitch to your media partners and Fox and ESPN and be able to do that, or if you have to wait. I've certainly heard nothing that's like specifically told me, oh yeah, you could definitely do that, and this is how you would do it. So, I mean, I tend to still be a little bit more in the, like, you're probably looking at the next TV deal, right, on that, but maybe not. No, there's no pressing reason to bring Gonzaga or UConn in until then, perhaps, unless you think about the fact that, if you think like putting UConn in the Big 12 will really beef up your product now, it'll be more like proof of concept and showing how great the games will be. And hey, we can get UConn Kansas, and we can get Kansas Houston, and we can get Baylor UConn, and like people see that and see what it does, and you can provide tangible ratings, how much that's driving it. Like that may build you a better case and get you a little bit of extra money, maybe if they're coming in before that. I could maybe find some reasons why, but I generally get what you're saying there. How big will the conference grow? I mean, that's also next to impossible to predict, but you're looking at potential for anywhere from 4 to 6, probably from the ACC. And maybe a UConn or a Gonzaga. So that's 6 to 8. So then we'd be talking about 22 to 24. I mean, yeah, I'd have a hard time seeing it getting higher than 24, but that's probably the north end of it. It's probably the north end of it. And I hope you understand, Jake, when I say like, it's just really hard for me to like definitively answer that and say like, well, this is definitely what's going to happen. A lot of variables to play out. If the Dennis Dodd scenario played out, I would think that you're probably snagging 4 out of either the ACC or maybe it's 3 and a UConn, something like that. And that, to answer the question about no reason to bring them in until then, that could be another thing that's a factor. If you're bringing in, if there's 3 schools you like from the ACC, to make it a nice round number, be easier on you scheduling wise and all that stuff, maybe it would make more sense to do a UConn or a Gonzaga at that point. But good questions for sure. I appreciate all of that. All right, it is buzzer beater time. If you want to get something in, now is your chance. Click the $ below the chat box to do so. Appreciate all of you guys for being here. If you are a supporter of the channel, and if you are somebody that just wants to support what I do, you're a Big 12 fan, you want your Big 12 news without SEC or Big 10 bias, go to ofbnews.com, open for business, subscribe to the newsletter, ofbnews.com, the Big 12 newsletter there. Totally free. Would appreciate it. We've got almost 2,000 people subscribed here in the first less than 2 months of the product. So I appreciate all of you guys who have done that so far. I may hold off on this. Big 12 innovative idea. I like it a lot. I do want to talk about it at some point, but I may have to hold off until the next live show, which be patient with me on that. We shall see. I am going to be traveling this weekend, a little getaway trip for my birthday before the college football season gets going in earnest. But I may still be able to do something there. So we'll see. But I would like to at some point talk about this. If you missed it, Oklahoma State, they're putting QR codes on their helmets so that you can donate to the NIL fund. Like during a game, if there's like a close-up shot of the helmet, a dude's just scored. Like I understand why that's an easy idea to scoff at, and QR codes, will people use it? That's kind of stupid. I'm telling you, it's not a horrible idea, man. It's not a horrible idea. I do want to explain all that to you guys, but I'm going to get to Mark, and then I think we'll probably get out of here. Mark says, I hated UConn to the Big 12 at first, but then thought we might need a patsy on our schedule so our teams get a break, a la Vandy and Rutgers. Well, I mean, I've said that about the SEC. Like when we talk about Kansas and the case for Kansas, that was a part of it, and it's nothing against Lance Leipold and the football program, which clearly is well above like a Vandy right now, well above that. They would be a team that, you know, they're not going to be up at the top of the SEC every single year, right? So you do need teams to lose some games so that your Oklahomas and Tennessees of the world aren't losing so much that they're really unhappy. And like, that's, you know, there is a through line to get there and be like, you do need something like that. You're saying, hey, the Big 12 needs their version. The only problem is the Big 12, you have to be so ruthlessly efficient with the money again. So if it is going to be a drag monetarily on the conference, even if you do want, and that might be a nice thing for football purposes in a way, you do need monetarily everything to still make sense. But I get what you're saying. I like the thought. I do like the thought on that. That would not be the worst thing in the world for teams if that were to happen. P.S. My apology was for watching Locked On. Well, I'm never going to begrudge you guys for watching any of the other channels in this space. I root for everybody. I don't ever want it to be like a, you know, some kind of, I have to hate this guy because he does the same thing. Like, I talk to a lot of these guys. I'm friends with a lot of these guys. I think there are a lot of people doing really good things in the space. So I encourage you to go watch whatever else it is that you want to watch. As long as you're still consuming my content, man, that's awesome. So no apology necessary, Mark. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you a lot. Oh man, you guys are saying it. Okay, you know what? Hell with it. I'll do the Oklahoma State QR code take because I'm seeing some reaction in the chat from it here. Robert, you're damn right. I think this is an idea that will catch on. I really do. Here was the story that came out. So in a conference where, you know, Brett Yormark has been very innovative at the forefront of looking into private equity, naming rights, all these different things to help the Big 12 maximize its value, get as much money as possible. It's a league that definitely needs it. He's sitting here now, I would imagine, looking down at Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State and just like, dude, tip of the cap. This is great. This is a very innovative idea that is all in the name of making more money for your school and your players. Is it going to be a home run? We'll see. We don't know, but it's a big swing. And I like that. It's a creative swing. And I like that. The Big 12 needs it. So Oklahoma State announced Tuesday that the Cowboys will sport QR codes on their helmets, linking to a donation page for the school's NIL fund, believed to be a first in college football. The QR codes on the back of each helmet will be 1.5 square inches. The school said that while the codes won't be visible from the stands on game day, fans watching during TV broadcasts will be able to capture them on their phones. Oklahoma State believes this will help raise the team's NIL value throughout the year. They do, by the way, go to a general team fund. So you're not donating to the specific athlete. It goes to a general team fund, which can be a part of trying to get some money to players that are less heralded stars, right? Offensive linemen. But like, I wouldn't think that the majority of that money from a general team fund is going to go to like Ollie Gordon. He's getting plenty. I think he's probably taken care of. So if you want to argue, and I saw like one article talking about this that was kind of arguing like, oh, recruiting advantage for Oklahoma State here. You know, this could help if their lower tier guys on the roster are making more money because of this, or their offensive linemen are. Maybe that gives them a recruiting. I mean, we'll see. I think it's like, one, how much money are you actually going to make off of it? And if it is a lot of money, that recruiting advantage will probably go away fast because everybody's going to start doing it, because everybody will start putting the QR code on the back of the helmet. That's kind of been the argument for a lot of people against, like, well, why would the Big 12 do private equity? And I said, well, you still need to go try and do it. If it's going to work, like, do it. Same thing here. Who cares if people are going to copy it? It's a good idea. It's like, what's the risk? What's the downside? That's a big piece of my argument here. What is the downside to this at all? You get made fun of a couple times on the internet because you have a QR code on the back of your helmet. Fine. Who cares? They're not even that big. It's not like you see the helmet and it looks like something gaudy or stupid or crazy. And then maybe people will actually donate. And the case for that would be, you have people like in the moment. You have people in the moment where they're like, heat of the moment. You might do something crazy like that. Ollie Gordon scores the game-winning touchdown to beat Oklahoma, win Bedlam. Yeah, there might be some Oklahoma State fans that are like, dude, instead of buying drinks for all my buddies at the bar right now around here, I'm giving this round to Ollie Gordon and company, or the offensive line who blocked for me here. Like, when you're in the moment, you're much more apt to do things like that. Like, so I go to a lot of concerts, right? And I see the merch prices are outrageous at these things. And I understand that part of it is like the building takes a cut of it. But, it's $45 for a concert t-shirt. I bought a $45 concert t-shirt at the Blink-182 show in Columbus that I went to last week. And a lot of it is because you're wrapped up in the moment. Now, that shirt I would buy. Blink-182 is my favorite band. I would have bought the shirt anyway. But there have been things that I bought at concerts before where if I were outside of that environment, I'd be like, nah, I don't really need that. I wouldn't spend the money. I wouldn't buy the $45 t-shirt there. I don't really need it. But when you're there and you're wrapped up in the moment and you're like, man, this is awesome. I'm feeling this. The vibes are great. I am excited about this. I'm going to go spend the money now. That's a great way to capitalize on people to get them to spend the money, right? Kind of the impulse of it. So it's the same thing here. You're working on that same sort of psychology. It's also the same sort of concept, I think, is like, you go to Amazon and you buy something. It's going to tell, before you get to the cart, it's going to show you 4 other things that it knows you've enjoyed before. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, maybe get one of these too. You're already in buy mode. They're trying to get you to double down on it when you're already like there. So there is, I think there's a lot psychologically to that. Plus, let's layer this on top of it. What else has happened when you guys are watching college football games? I know 2 things that are happening when you guys are watching college football games. You're drinking and you're gambling. There's a lot of that going on. So the drinking aspect of it, you're feeling jovial. And people have spent all sorts of dumb money when they've been drunk before, right? That's a tale as old as time. So you're drunk when you're watching the game and Ollie Gordon rips off the 80-yard touchdown run. Dude, hell yeah. Let me throw this guy a few bones, man. This is awesome. That was a great play. And then if he does that and he rips off the 80-yard run and scores a touchdown and it's your team and you're excited, plus you just hit the over for your Ollie Gordon rushing prop that day and it made you $150. Well, now you may be like, dude, Ollie, you deserve some of that. You made me some money. Let me kick a little bit of that to you. Again, I know it's going to a general team fund, not to just the player, but you think, hey, team, guys who blocked for him, whoever it was, you just made me some money. I'll give you a little piece of that because I love you guys. You're my team. I'm drunk and I'm wrapped up in the moment. I feel like I'm building a case there for like people will pay some money to this. People will spend some money if the QR code, like if it will actually pop up and work right. Because I will admit, a lot of the times that I've tried to use the QR codes in situations like that, like it'll take it a little bit of time to actually pop up. It's not always the smoothest ride there. So hopefully everybody in Stillwater is on top of that and making sure that it all works very well and everything's in tip top shape there. So I would expect that you're going to see other teams doing this eventually. I would expect that it will at least work to some degree, and people will be like, hey, we need every penny we can possibly get. And if this is going to help get people in the heat of the moment to donate some money, why not do it? Why not do it? If it helps one little thing, all we've got to do is print these QR codes on the helmets. Who cares? Guys, I don't think people understand, we're about to have sponsors on the field. We're about to have logos eventually on jerseys. We're about to have the All-State 12 conference. I get it. If you're a purist, this is all stuff that you don't love, but the toothpaste is out of the tube, man. You're not getting it back in. So just embrace it. Just be along for the ride. Just embrace it. Conundrum, tattoo a QR code to your ass, Kurt, so Sankey can give you a buzzer beater. That's really funny. That is really funny. Thank you, Conundrum. What a great comment. And thank you to everybody for being here tonight. I appreciate you. Fun live show. Got everything in. And, I felt like this is a good one. Guys, if you want to support the channel, if you want your Big 12 news without Big 10 or SEC bias, go to ofbnews.com to subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter. We are close to 2,000 subscriptions on that in just under 2 months, and I greatly appreciate everybody who has done that. Share the show, share Open for Business wherever you're at on social media, in person. Tell a couple of friends about it. That really helps me. Appreciate all the guys who do that. Like the video on your way out the door. That would be amazing as well if you could do that. And if you're watching this taped, you didn't get here live, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to submit your question or comment there. All right, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week. And like I said, stay tuned. I will keep you updated through the community tab on the channel and on Twitter at JLKurtz about what's going to be going down on Sunday and or Monday, because I'll also be traveling Monday. So we will figure out something. I'll find a way to get you some content one way or another, but schedule may be a little bit different because of that. And then we'll be in season. We'll be in season, baby. All right, take care. Enjoy week 0 football this weekend, and I will talk to you soon.